Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the SEC Conference Call, your ultimate guide to one of the nation's best basketball conferences. This show is your courtside seats for all of the great action. We will spotlight the players to watch, take you inside the huddle with the coach's playbook, and deliver the expert analysis you've come to expect from us here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. We're thrilled to cover the heart-pounding action of this incredible conference. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP. And don't forget to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for all of our fantastic blogs and to learn how you can join the Crunch Time Express with one of our handicapping packages. Whether you're looking for an edge in sports wagering or just want more insights, we've got you covered. 16 teams, one conference, infinite excitement. The SEC has been the stage for legendary players, iconic coaches, and unforgettable rivalries. This is where passion meets competition and championship dreams are forged. Welcome to the SEC Conference Call. And now let's head to the studio with our host, Jessica, and our founder and senior analyst, Kenneth. Welcome to this week's episode of the SEC Conference Call. Jessica has the day off as she is wrapping up the college football playoffs. As we gear up for another thrilling Saturday of SEC basketball, the stakes couldn't be higher. With 8 conference matchups on tap, the standings are starting to take shape, and for some teams, it's already make or break time. This is the quarter pole in the conference schedules. We are starting to see a little separation in the league. For the 3 teams winless in conference play, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, Saturday is a must-win moment. In a league as competitive as the SEC, starting 0-5 could all but eliminate them from the regular season championship race and leave them scrambling to stay relevant. These teams aren't just fighting for a win, they're fighting to keep their seasons alive. Ole Miss's win on the road at Alabama has put the Rebels in a tie with Auburn at the top of the standings. Sitting 1 game back is Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, and Missouri. Let's break down the matchups and storylines shaping this crucial weekend. First up, the Texas Longhorns head to Gainesville to face the Florida Gators in the electric atmosphere of the Exactech Arena at the Stephen C. O'Connell Center. Can the Gators defend their home court, or will the Longhorns make a statement on the road? In Athens, the Auburn Tigers take on the Georgia Bulldogs at the historic Stegeman Coliseum. Will Georgia's home court advantage give them the edge, or can Auburn's firepower silence the crowd? Meanwhile, all eyes will be on Rupp Arena, where the Kentucky Wildcats host the Alabama Crimson Tide. With 2 powerhouse programs clashing, this is set to be a showdown for the ages. In Starkville, It's a fierce rivalry as the Ole Miss Rebels visit the Mississippi State Bulldogs at the Sandy and John Black Pavilion. Expect fireworks as these in-state foes battle for bragging rights. Over in Columbia, the Arkansas Razorbacks travel to face the Missouri Tigers in the Mizzou Arena. Can the Hogs stay sharp, or will the Tigers defend their territory? The South Carolina Gamecocks head west to take on the Oklahoma Sooners in Lloyd Noble Center, as the Gamecocks look to leave Norman with a key road win. In College Station, the LSU Tigers face off against the Texas A&M Aggies at Reed Arena. This SEC clash promises to keep fans on the edge of their seats. And finally, in Nashville, where the Tennessee Volunteers take on the Vanderbilt Commodores at the iconic Memorial Gymnasium, a venue known for its unique court layout and rowdy home crowd. The battles are fierce, the stakes are enormous, and Saturday's games will set the tone for the rest of the season. And now let me welcome in our founder and senior analyst, Kenneth, for his breakdown of these 8 games.
And taking a fantastic job with the lead-in once again, getting us ready for another amazing weekend of SEC basketball. Welcome into the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network SEC conference call. This is your number one stop for all things Southeastern Conference hoops. Folks, we got another jam-packed slate of games starting here in just a couple of hours. So we're trying out this new time slot on Saturday morning, not only so we can have the opening lines that we would get late Friday night, but a chance to let those numbers in the overnight kind of marinate a little bit so we can give you the most current information possible. So let's go ahead and jump into the slate, and we're going to start there in beautiful Columbia, Missouri. And we're going to start with the Arkansas Razorbacks, who, folks, when I say desperately need a win, this team is in desperate need of a win. 0-4 to start conference play, as you heard in the lead-in. A loss by Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Arkansas this weekend, your hopes for an SEC regular season title is all but over. So let's get into this breakdown here. If and you are looking live, to quote our mentor, Brent Musburger, at beautiful Columbia, Missouri. The Missouri Tigers will host the Arkansas Razorbacks in this SEC showdown. Arkansas, led by John Calipari, aims to snap a 4-game losing streak and secure their first SEC conference win. Meanwhile, Dennis Gates and the Missouri Tigers look to extend their 3-game winning streak and solidify their spot in the SEC. Let's start right there with the Arkansas Razorbacks. And right now, this team still, because of how strong the conference is, and credit the work that they did in the non-conference, they still come in as our 37th power ranked team, 11-6 on the season. You heard 0-4 in conference play. Here are the key trends for this team so far. 1-6 against quality opponents and really struggling in close games. Only 2-3 in those contests. As far as their offense goes, averaging 78 points per game. That's only 104th in the nation, folks. 364 teams play Division I college basketball. So they have to get better shooting from behind the arc, because they're shooting actually a decent percentage inside of that 3-point line at about 56%. Solid free throw shooting percentage as well at 71%. Their defense allowing 67 and a half points per game. That's 76 in the nation. They emphasize strong interior defense, only allowing their opponents to shoot under 41% from the field. So good job there on defense. It's really on the offensive side of the ball where they're really struggling. For the Missouri Tigers, Missouri comes in as our 33rd power ranked team. So not a big difference between the two teams as far as the power rankings go. Missouri 14-3 on the season, 3-1 in conference play. 4-3 against quality teams, and this team does a fantastic job of shooting from the free throw line, 80% from the foul stripe there. Explosive offense, almost 85 points per game. That's top 20 in all of college basketball with a strong perimeter shooting. Folks, this team is shooting about 36.5% from behind the three-point line. As far as their defense goes, their defense only allows 69 points per game, and they excel from defending that three-point line. Their opponents only shooting 28% from behind the arc. Now, let's compare the Arkansas offense with this Missouri defense. Arkansas' strength on the offensive side is their interior scoring. Like I said, inside of that three-point line, they're shooting about 56%. Now, Missouri's strength, their perimeter defense, as I mentioned. Opponents only shooting less than 28% from behind the three-point line. They're chasing you off of that three-point line, forcing you into the interior where they're able to generate a number of turnovers. This Missouri defense forces 13 turnovers per game in conference play right now. When we look at the key matchups, Arkansas's ability to finish inside must be a key for them in this ball game, and they have to take better care of the ball. When I take a look at their numbers here for Arkansas, I'm looking at their turnovers per game. Okay, yeah, that's problematic there. When you're turning the ball over almost 12 times a game and with a turnover percentage of 14%, you really got to keep that down, especially when you're playing on the road. Can sometimes get away with it at home, but not so much on the road. Let's take a look at the Missouri offense versus this Arkansas defense. Elite perimeter shooting there for Missouri, shooting almost 37% from behind the three-point line. I already talked about how good they are at the free throw line. Arkansas, their strength is protecting the rim, averaging 6 blocks per game. That will have to come in handy. It's not just the blocked shots, but it's also the intimidation factor. How many shots are you forcing those opponents to miss because they're thinking about the shot being blocked instead of finishing out the shot there? As far as the key matchups go, as far as pace of play, Missouri likes to play at a very high pace. And so does Arkansas. Both teams want to get up and down the court, almost 70 possessions per game for both offenses. So no big advantage there as far as style of play goes. As far as the rebounding edge, slight edge goes to Arkansas, especially on the defensive glass. Arkansas averages, looking at their total rebounding percentage, 51%. Missouri, a tick behind, right around 49.6% there. Talked about turnovers in this ball game. Arkansas forces about 12.5 turnovers per game and commits 11.5 per game. Missouri forces 13 turnovers per game. They commit 11.5 per game. Missouri, slight edge here with the better pressure defense. As far as clutch situations go, talked about it. Arkansas 2-3 in close games, 7 points or less. Missouri 4-2 in those contests. Big edge, especially if we have to get into a free throw shooting contest. Arkansas shoots a respectable 71%, but that 80% there for Arkansas could be the key in a very close ball game. Going to give you the opening line here and where that line currently sits. Looking at the big board here. Okay, currently, as we're recording this morning, Missouri is a 6-point favorite there at home. That over under 149.5. So if you're looking at playing those markets, numbers on the move on both sides of that equation there. I'm going to give you a couple of key players to watch in this ball game here for the Razorbacks. It's got to start with Boogie Flan, averaging 15 points per game. That's 14th in the Southeastern Conference, and he's averaging a little over 6 rebounds per game. He's going to have to play big in this ball game. Another player that is absolutely going to have to come up big is DJ Wagner, almost 12 points per game for a little over 4 assists in conference play. As far as the Missouri Tigers go, it starts with their dynamic duo of Mark Mitchell, averaging almost 13 points per game. That's 27th in the conference. And Tamar Bates, averaging about 12.5 points per game, 4 assists. He's really going to have to give them some balanced scoring in this contest. Some final thoughts and keys for this game. Keys to victory for Arkansas: must capitalize on second chance points through offensive rebounding and limit Missouri's perimeter shooting by closing out aggressively on shooters. For Missouri, must maintain their offensive efficiency, leveraging their strong 3-point and free throw percentage shooting. And then they must force Arkansas into turnovers and converting those into transition opportunities. I think this is going to be a game that wants to get up and down. So, like I said, big game for Arkansas if they want to climb back into the middle of the pack in the conference. Up next will be the Auburn Tigers heading down to Athens, Georgia to take on the Bulldogs. And folks, this is a matchup that really kind of caught my eye earlier this week as we were getting ready for this contest. And what we've seen with the Auburn Tigers is just fantastic job by Bruce Pearl once again. So we've also seen Mike White, head coach for the Georgia Bulldogs, really kind of get this team going this year, and credit to that head coach. So let's give you the game context here as we head down to beautiful Stegeman Coliseum there on the campus of the Georgia Bulldogs. Auburn, led by head coach Bruce Pearl, looks to extend their dominance, and with their 4-game in-conference winning streak, of course, they're 4-0, and maintain their stronghold as being the number 1 team in the country. Now, Georgia, under head coach Mike White, aims to rebound after losing their last contest earlier this week. So still a fantastic job, and with a conference record of 2-2, nothing to hold their heads down. This team has absolutely been a pleasant surprise there for all of the Bulldog fans. Let's give the team profile here. Auburn Tigers, as I mentioned, they've been our number 1 power ranked team for the last few weeks, and I've seen nothing that will make me question that data point. 16-1 on the season, 4-0 in conference play, 9-1 against quality teams, and this team thrives in close game situations. 4-1. You want to talk about an elite scoring offense? That will be the Auburn Tigers, averaging 86.5 points per game. That's 8th in the nation, shooting 51% from the field, 38% from downtown. Their defense, strong defensive unit, only allowing 66 points per game. That's 46th in the nation. And they're dominating with 7.8 hustle plays per game. This is a stat that I've been charting for decades, and I just decided to call it hustle plays. It's a combination of blocked shots and steals. What that does is that creates momentum, and that shows how your effort is on the defensive side of the ball. Now, we've already talked about the injury. Johnny Broome out with the ankle injury. It's a significant loss to Auburn's interior scoring and rebounding strength, but we saw this team in their last contest perform quite well without the big man in the middle. Forced the Georgia Bulldogs come in as our 29th overall power ranked team, 14-3, as I mentioned, 2-2 on the season. Key trends for the Georgia Bulldogs: They're 3-3 against quality teams, and they excel in close games, 4-0. They have a really balanced attack, averaging 78.5 points per game with a strong interior scoring presence inside of the three-point line. This team is shooting about 57%. As far as their defensive side, strong defense, allowing just under 65 points per game and excelling in opponents' field goal percentage, holding their opponents to under 39%. Now, Clash Peters, shoulder injury, he's questionable. If unavailable, that loss will be a key loss as far as their depth and rotation goes. So we haven't gotten any word yet. So if you're looking to wager on this game, you might want to check and see if Clash Peters is going to be available. Not because he's so much in the starting lineup, but he is definitely a member of that team that you want to keep an eye on. All right, let's take a look at the offense and defensive comparison. Let's start with the visiting Auburn Tigers here. High efficiency on the offensive side of the ball with an offensive rating of 127. That's second in the Southeastern Conference, and strong shooting percentages both inside and outside of the three-point line. Inside of that three-point line, they're shooting 60%. From behind the three-point line, they're shooting almost 38%. Now, Georgia will counter that with an elite opponent shooting defense. Like I said, their opponent shooting less than 39%, shooting about 28% from the three-point line. Key matchups, Auburn must continue to adapt without the big fella in the middle, relying on their perimeter shooting and Chaney Johnson efficiency inside. Georgia's ability to contest shots will be pivotal in neutralizing Auburn's potent offense. Now let's take a look at the Georgia Bulldogs when they have the ball going up against this Auburn defense. Effective ball movement. Here's a number that I've talked about on the pod quite a bit. That's that assist percentage. How many of your field goals are coming off of an assist? Georgia is at a 52% in that. That signals for me a strong team with ball movement. Something to keep in mind in this ball game. Auburn, dominant shot blocking team. Now we'll see if that number changes without the big fella in the middle, but Auburn averages about 7 blocks per game, forcing teams into almost 11 turnovers per game. Georgia will need to limit their turnovers against Auburn's pressure defense. Mr. Newell, post scoring could challenge Auburn's interior defense without JB in the middle. As far as rebounding edges go, now with Broome not being there, that rebounding edge that Georgia had a slight edge in already could be a little bit more significant as we continue to watch this game unfold. Both teams do a really good job of forcing turnovers. Like I said, Auburn forces about 11 turnovers per game, only commits 9 turnovers per game. Georgia forces almost 13 turnovers per game, but they're turning the ball over 13 times per game. So got to take better care of the ball in this matchup. So edge to Auburn when it comes to that. Both teams play at a similar pace. So we'll see if home court has any influence on the way this game from a tempo standpoint will be played out. As far as clutch situations, both teams are elite in very close game situations. Both teams shoot about the same percentage from the free throw line, slight edge to Auburn, 75% to 73% for Georgia. This line opened late last night with Auburn about a 7-point favorite. Currently sits with Auburn as a 6-point favorite. That over-under sits at 146 there. Some final key takeaways for this ball game. Well, let me start with players to watch. And let's start there with Missouri's Asia Newell, almost 14 and a half points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. Without the big fella in the middle, he's probably going to need to go for a double-double in this ball game if Georgia is not only going to look to cover that number, but get the win outright. Also looking at Dakota Lefew, about 10 points per game, and he's taking about 5 threes per game. So he's going to need to knock down a couple of threes in this ball game just to stretch out that Auburn defense. For Auburn, CBM, 14 points per game, a little over 3 rebounds per game, and then Miles Kelly averages about 13 points per game, 5.5 rebounds. Gonna probably need him to get close to 8 or 9 rebounds in this ball game just to offset the big fella not being in the middle. Final keys for both teams: Auburn maintain their turnover edge and contest Georgia's ball movement aggressively. See if you can't force Georgia into some more turnovers in this ball game. For the Bulldogs, they got to limit the turnovers and force Auburn into some low percentage shots in this contest. Our next contest is the Texas Longhorns against the Florida Gators, and we'll be heading down to Gainesville for this matchup. And as we get everything to refresh here, let's just go ahead and jump right into the game context here. Former Big 12 member, now a part of the Southeastern Conference, the Texas Longhorns. They've gotten off to a rocky start, 1-3 in conference play, as head coach Rodney Terry is just getting to migrate a new conference. And Florida Gators, coming off of a loss earlier this week, sit at 2-2 in conference play. Let's give the team profiles here. And let's start with the Texas Longhorns. Our 31st power ranked team, 12-5 on the season, 1-3 in conference play. They're also 1-3 against quality teams struggling in. Wait a minute, let me take a look at that before I give that number out. Bear with me just a moment. This team is actually pretty solid in close game situations. They are 5-2 on the season. And when I look at their offense, averaging about 82 points per game, which is 46th in the nation, they rely heavily on their total rebounding percentage, with a total rebounding percentage of 57%. Solid defensive unit, allowing about 66 points per game. That's 44th in the nation. And they do force you into some turnovers, almost 14 turnovers per game. Now, Chendall Weaver is questionable with a hip injury, which could affect their backcourt depth and rotation in this matchup. As for the Florida Gators, they still come in as our 6th power-ranked team with a 15-2 record. As I mentioned, 2-2 in the conference, 5 in. Make sure I'm looking at this right here. Okay, so when we look at their numbers here, okay, 5-2 against quality opponents. Okay, we like that. And let's see if we look at Texas. Yeah, struggling against quality opponents, 1-5 there. So I think I may have been off on their number. Yes, I was. Okay, so all right, so let's continue with this Gator offense. Explosive offense, averaging 86 points per game, 11th in the nation. And this team thrives in transition and three-point shooting. Their defense, very good defense, allowing about 66 points per game, and really do a good job of defending all areas of the court, whether it's outside of the three-point line or inside. No key injuries to speak of for the Gators leading into this matchup. That is always a good thing when you're playing in conference play. You want to be at full strength as much as possible. All right, let's get into the matchups here. When Texas has the ball, it's very key that if they're not taking care of shots, that they continue to rebound the offensive glass really well. With a 42% offensive rebounding percentage, that is very strong. Now, Florida's strength on defense, elite field goal percentage, allowing their opponents only 37% from the field, even better from behind the three-point line at about 28%. Texas must rely on second chance points to crack this Florida disciplined defense. Now, when Florida has the ball, you're talking about a team that is high offensive efficiency number, 120, let's round it up, 122 offensive rating. That is phenomenal. And they get to the foul line quite a bit. And I was looking for their free throw attempts. So both teams do a really good job of getting to the free throw line. Texas gets to the line about 26 times per game. Florida gets there about 22 times per game. So something to bear in mind in this contest. And defensive glass. So going to give a slight edge to Florida, but I do mean a very slight edge as far as that rebounding percentage goes. As far as turnovers, this is going to be a key for Texas. They force 14 turnovers per game, commit about 11 and a half. The Gators, they force about 12 turnovers per game, committing 11. So slight edge to the Longhorns in that area. Both teams play at a similar pace, so no big advantage in that contest. I mentioned the clutch situations there. As far as close games go, Texas 5-2 in close games, Florida 1-2. Going to give a slight edge to the Longhorns in that category. Both teams do a mediocre job as far as the free throw percentage goes. Florida shoots about 72% from the free throw line, Texas 69%. When I look at where these numbers open, I believe that the Gators open at a 11-point favorite. That number's now down to 10.5. So depending on how you want to play that, you may want to go ahead and jump on that before tip-off. Key players for this matchup, Walter Clayton Jr., 20 points per game, averaging 9 rebounds per game. I think Florida's going to need another big-time performance out of their star player. I'm also going to highlight Alex Condon, averaging about 10 points per game, 7 rebounds per game. Probably need him to go for a double-double in this contest. For Texas, Jordan Pope has got to absolutely tickle the nets in this ball game. Comes in averaging about 18.5 points per game. Probably going to need him to get close to that. Probably need him to get close to that 20-point mark. And I'm going to also highlight Tremont Marks, 11 points per game. I think he's going to need to probably up that to about 15 or 16 in this ball game just to give Texas an opportunity to come out of here with a win. Keys for Texas: dominate on the offensive glass and capitalize on second chance opportunities. Also, they must reduce turnovers, push the pace against this Florida Gator defense before that defense can really get settled and set up. For Florida, they must exploit Texas perimeter defense by efficient three-point shooting. And then they too also must control the boards, dictate the pace, and limit Texas transition offense. All right, let's move into our next contest, and that is the South Carolina Gamecocks versus Boomer Sooner. And Oklahoma, since entering the conference, has really gotten off to a sluggish start here. So let's head to the Lloyd Noble Center and take a look at this matchup. Both teams are winless in conference play, so desperation for both teams in this ball game. And let's start with the visiting team as far as their team profile. The South Carolina Gamecocks comes in as our 83rd power ranked team, 10-7 on the season, 1-6 against quality opponents, and we've talked about the struggles there in conference play, averaging about 72 points per game. Folks, it's a reason why they're 0-4 in conference. Just cannot put the ball in the basket. As far as the defensive side of the glass, they allow their opponents only 68 points per game. So if they could get some more scoring, this team would probably be a little bit better off now. Big time injury for the Gamecocks with Jamari Thomas being out. And if I'm able to pull up his numbers here, give me just a moment. Okay, so Jamari Thomas, he's averaging about, he's playing about 30 minutes per game. So he's significant in their rotation. And he's been out the last couple of games. So only appeared in their first couple of games in conference play. So they've absolutely been missing his production there. So we'll talk about who needs to step up in his absence. As far as the Oklahoma Sooners, Oklahoma comes in as our 45th power ranked team, 13-4 on the season. And against quality opponents, they're 3-4, undefeated at home, 9-0. Keep that in mind as this game is being played there in Norman. As far as their offensive side of the ball, averaging about 81 points per game. Do a really good job of shooting inside of the three-point line, about 50, let's round it up, 58%. Their defense does struggle a little bit. They're probably about in the middle of all Division I teams, allowing 71 points per game. Now let's take a look at the offensive comparison. For South Carolina, efficient perimeter shooting. They shoot about 35% from the three-point line, only 8.5 turnovers per game. Now, Oklahoma's strength on defense, strong interior defense, only allowing their opponents to shoot about 42.5%, and they force 15.5 turnovers per game. South Carolina ball control is going to be very important for you in this contest. For the Sooners, when they are on offense, high efficiency shooting there, 57.5% inside of the three-point line. From the foul stripe, 74%. South Carolina's strength on defense, they allow their opponents to shoot 40% from the field, and they do a fantastic job there on the defensive glass. They're 74.6% defensive rebounding percentage there. Key matchup for Oklahoma. Oklahoma's interior scoring against South Carolina, ability to limit second chance points will be a very big key in this ball game. As I mentioned, both teams, fantastic job rebounding. Give a slight edge to Oklahoma in this contest. As I mentioned, both teams do a really good job of forcing turnovers. Oklahoma turns the ball over about one more turnover per game. So we're going to call this an even edge as far as turnovers go. Both teams play at a very similar pace, so no big advantage there. Let's talk about clutch situations. South Carolina 3-1 in close games. Oklahoma 2-0. All of that coming in the non-conference. So we're going to take that with a little bit of grain of salt. Both teams shoot about the same from the free throw line. So that is something to keep in mind. About 74% for both teams. Okay, this line, as we currently look at the big board, This line opened with Oklahoma as a 6.5-point favorite. That has moved out now to where we sit currently as Oklahoma is a 8-point favorite. That over under is at 141.5 right now. Looks like that is on the move. So we expect that number to close probably about 142 on the total. Some keys for key players for both teams in this matchup. We're going to start with the Sooners. Jalen Moore averaging 19 points per game. That's fifth in the conference. Him and Jeremiah Fears averaging about 13 points per game. Both players will need to have a big matchup in this contest. And then for South Carolina, Colin Murray Boyles, 12.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. Going to need a double-double out of that young man for the Gamecocks. And then also Zachary Davis, 10 points per game, 5 rebounds. Going to need another big-time performance from him as well. Final thoughts and keys for victory for both teams. For the Gamecocks, must exploit Oklahoma's inconsistency on the perimeter defense with effective three-point shooting and limit Oklahoma's second chance opportunities through strong defensive rebounding. For the Sooners, dominate inside with high percentage shots, exploiting South Carolina defensive lapse. So good ball movement, find high percentage shots inside of the three-point line. Take advantage of all of those opportunities. Then finally, for Oklahoma, they got to control the pace and force South Carolina into turnovers. All right, let's head to our next matchup, and that is going to be the LSU Tigers heading over to College Station, it looks like. Yeah, we're heading to the Reed Arena, and we're going to break down this matchup as well here. So Texas A&M sitting in conference play at 2-2, while LSU 1-3. Desperation for both teams to get back into the swing of things here. Let's start with the profile here for both teams. For the visiting LSU Fighting Tigers, our 69th power ranked team coming into this contest 12-5, 1-3 in conference play. Their key trends: 3-5 against quality teams, 2-0 in close games. Average about 81 points per game. Defense allows about 70 points per game. So they're able to get some separation when it's afforded to them. Haven't seen that success here in conference play. As I look for key injuries here, yeah, they're going to be without Jalen Reed. Looks like he's out for the year with the torn ACL. Tyler Ward is sidelined with an undisclosed injury. He will miss some time here in conference play. That is significant. I'm taking a look at A&M's injury report as we speak. Of course, they are out without Wade Taylor IV, dealing with an undisclosed injury, and it is uncertain if he'll be able to go in this matchup. He's listed as questionable. Looks like getting a message to come across. He's expected not to play in this ball game. So key injuries for both teams here. For A&M, they come in as our 21st power ranked team. 13-4 overall, 2-2 in conference play. 6-4 against quality teams, undefeated at home, 10-0, averaging about 77 points per game, only allowing 66 points per game. Now, let's take a look at when LSU has the ball. LSU's strength is scoring with inside of the three-point line, shooting about 58% and do a really good job from the free throw line. If I can pull up their percentage here from the free throw line. All right, looks like LSU shoots about 76% from the free throw line. So really good job there by the Tigers. Now, A&M strength on defense, They do a fantastic job of forcing teams into very difficult shots. Their opponents shooting less than 36% from the field, and A&M does not give up a lot of second chance opportunities with a 75% defensive rebounding percentage. Key matchup, LSU's ability to create second chance opportunities will be limited, so they will have to be effective in that part of the game. As far as when Texas A&M has the ball, their strength, offensive rebounding, and really good ball movement. This team averages about 16 assists per game. That is fantastic there. So a key for A&M, offensive efficiency in the half court against that LSU disruptive defense will definitely be a key in this matchup. As far as total rebounding percentage, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding percentage, all very close. Going to give a slight edge to A&M because they are playing at home. You usually get a little bit more rebounding intensity when you're playing at home. So we'll see if that holds up. Both teams are pretty close as far as forcing turnovers, about a little over 12 turnovers forced per game. LSU turns the ball over about 13 times per game. A&M only 10. So A&M a little bit better taking care of the ball and maintaining possession there. Now, LSU wants to play at a little bit faster pace than the Aggies. So LSU is going to definitely look to get those defensive rebounds and get out in transition. Now, like I said, both teams do a really great job of free throw shooting. LSU at 76%, A&M not too far behind at 75%. So both teams under pressure will knock down those free throws. Looking at where this game opened with LSU as a 10-point dog. As we look right now on the big board, that has moved out to where now A&M is an 11.5-point favorite. Over under is 145. So as we look, that line is starting to tick out. If you want to get A&M, you may have already missed the best number, because that number looks like it's heading towards 12 here in the not too distant future here. Some key players for both teams. Mr. Phelps there for the Aggies. He is the leading scorer as far as in conference play, averaging 24 points per game, 7 rebounds. And then Farrell Payne averaging about 16 points per game. Gonna need those two to get close to their average in this contest. For LSU, the third leading scorer in this conference is in this ball game. Cameron Carter averaging about 20 points per game. He's going to need a big-time performance, and he's going to need some help from his running mate. I'm going to look at Jordan Sears. Comes in averaging about 12 points per game, almost 6 assists per game. I think he's going to need to go for a big performance in this contest. Some final thoughts on this contest. LSU must utilize their pace to disrupt Texas A&M defensive rhythm, capitalize on turnovers to create those fast break opportunities. For the Aggies, they must continue to dominate on the boards, limiting LSU's second chance opportunities, and leverage their efficiency in the half court. Now, a game that I'm going to be very in tune to, as the Tennessee Volunteers are coming into my backyard here in Nashville, Tennessee. And we get this in-state matchup with these two teams. And folks, this is a game that I'm really in tune to seeing. So let's go ahead and get it going here. All right, you are looking live at Memorial Gymnasium as the Vanderbilt Commodores host the Tennessee Volunteers in this SEC showdown. Both teams aim to strengthen their conference standings as the Vanderbilt Commodores come into this game with a 2-2 record in conference. Tennessee one game ahead of them, with a 3-1 record in conference play. Rick Barnes, one of the best coaches in all of America, looks to continue Tennessee's hope of landing a number 1 seed once we get to March. And the Vols come in with our 7th slot as far as the power rankings go. 16-1 on the season, 3-1 in conference play, 6-1 against quality teams. And let me just verify this number here. Yeah, so we're looking at a team that does a really good job of just taking care of business, and with that record, you can see why. All right, so the Vols average about 77 points per game, relying strongly on balanced scoring and efficient ball movement. Defense, this is where they are absolutely standing on top of their heads here, allowing just 58 points per game. That's 3rd in the nation. Got a couple of key injuries here as Cameron Carr is out with that hand injury. He's been out since November and no timeline for him to return. And of course, we know JP's out for the season with that foot injury that sidelined him early on in the season. As far as the Volunteers go, as far as Vandy goes, Vandy is our 50th power ranked team, 14-3 overall. Let's see, Vandy comes in averaging 82 points per game, so this team can definitely put the ball in the basket. They allow their opponents just 67 points per game as well. Also dealing with some possible injuries. Alex Hemingway is out. No timetable for his return. Grant Huffman, questionable with an illness. Status uncertain for today's game. Carius is still out. No timetable for his return. And K. Wright is also sidelined with an illness. Looks like no timetable for his return as well. All right, let's take a look at the strengths here for Tennessee. Balanced scoring, perimeter defense, as I talked about. For Vandy, strong defensive rebounding team, and they do a really good job on the defensive boards. Key matchup when Tennessee has the ball, their ability to generate inside-outside offense against this Vanderbilt disciplined defense will be a key in this contest for the Commodores. They must knock down their three-point shots like they've done for most of the year at almost 39%. They will need to really have a similar effort in this contest. As far as Tennessee, suffocating defense, as I mentioned, allowing just under 58 points per game. As far as the rebounding edge, slight edge to Vanderbilt, but I do mean very slight. They just do a little bit better job on the offensive rebounding, but we're talking about a 1 percentage point difference there. So, like I said, very slight edge there to the Commodores. As far as forcing turnovers, see, Tennessee forces 10 turnovers per game, committing 11.5. So, got to do a little bit better job of taking care of the ball. As far as Vandy, they force about 12 turnovers per game. They commit just 9 turnovers per game. So, advantage Vanderbilt in that effort. Both teams play at a virtually identical pace per game. Both teams about 67 offensive possessions per game. Let's see, this line open with Tennessee as a 6.5 point favorite. Folks, that number's down to 5. Now, it looks like we're going to creep back up to 5.5 here. So if you're interested in taking the Vols, you want to go ahead and get them now at that 5 before it ticks back up. We'll probably close here probably about 5.5 or maybe even back up to 6. Over and under 140.5 for the game total here. Key players for this matchup. Normally I would highlight Double Z there for Tennessee with his 13.5 points. I'm going to go to Jordan Gainey, 11 points per game. You're going to need a big-time performance out of him. I think he's going to need to get about 15 points in this contest. And for the Commodores, AJ's got to have a big game. 14.5 points per game. I think he's probably going to need to go for 20 in this contest. He's going to need some help from Jason Edwards, who averages about 11 points per game. I think he's going to probably need about 15 in this contest. Keys to victory for the Vols: utilize their defense to disrupt Vandy's perimeter shooting, control the tempo, and capitalize on second chance opportunities. For Vandy, take advantage of that home court energy and limit their turnovers, focusing their efficiency from the three-point shooting to counter that Tennessee stifling defense. So when shots are there, you got to knock them down. We head to the Magnolia State with this matchup, and a pleasant surprise by both of these teams as Ole Miss comes into this contest 4-0 in conference play. Mississippi State 2-2. And let's just get right into the matchup here. Ole Miss comes in as our 25th power ranked team, 15-2 on the season, undefeated in conference play, averaging about 79 points per game, allowing just 65 points per game. Now, Brown Jones is out for the Rebels, undisclosed injury. Like I said, he's already been ruled out. Mississippi State still comes in as our 20th power ranked team, 14-3 on the season, averaging about 83 points per game, only allowing their opponents 70 points per game. They got a couple of key injuries as well, as Kanye Clary is out with that leg injury. He's missed several games already. Raleigh Kugler is also questionable ankle injury. We'll see if he's able to go as well. As far as the offensive comparisons for Ole Miss has thrived on getting second chance opportunities and knocking down their free throws. Mississippi State will counter that by their ability to force turnovers and defending the perimeter very effectively. Key for this matchup is the number of offensive rebounds that Ole Miss can get and be able to get those second chance points. For when Mississippi State has the ball, this team does a very good job of their field goal efficiency. Now, what do we know about Chris Beard, folks, head coach of Ole Miss? Stifling defense, and they do a very good job of attacking the defensive glass there, limiting their opponents to second chance opportunities. Mississippi State must convert inside against Ole Miss, and if there are any second chance opportunities, they got to take advantage of them. As far as the rebounding edge, I'm going to give a slight edge to Ole Miss just because of the total rebounding percentage. They're about 2 percentage points better than Mississippi State in that contest. Both teams do a really good job of turning the opponents over. Ole Miss at about 13.5, Mississippi State 15 forced turnovers per game. Both teams do a relatively good job of taking care of the ball. So slight edge to Mississippi State because they're able to turn their opponents over just a little bit better. Both teams play at almost an identical pace as far as the possessions go, about 69 possessions for both teams. Both teams shoot darn near identically from the foul line. Ole Miss about 70.5%. Mississippi State, 72%. This number opened with the Bulldogs as a 5.5 point favorite. as we sit here, that line has not moved. So we're still sitting with the same spread there in the total, 146.5, something to keep an eye on in this contest. Key players for Mississippi State, we're going to start with Josh Hubbard, 15 points per game, along with Claudell Harris Jr. at almost 14 points per game. Going to need a big-time performance from them. And, of course, for Ole Miss, Malik Daya, almost 18 points per game, 10 boards. Folks, his stat line over the past couple of games have been really impressive. He's probably looking to earn his way into maybe first or second team all conference if he continues to do that for the remainder of the year. Some final thoughts. Mississippi State must dominate the boards and limit Ole Miss second chance opportunities, force turnovers to disrupt that Ole Miss offensive rhythm. For the Rebels, they must continue to utilize their depth and rebounding advantage to generate additional possessions, control the pace to prevent Mississippi State from getting into a shooting rhythm in this contest. And folks, that leaves us with the game of the weekend as far as the Southeastern Conference. And we're going to head to Rupp Arena here as the Alabama Crimson Tide will be taking on the Kentucky Wildcats. And you are looking live at one of the most historic arenas in all of college basketball. Welcome to Rupp Arena, where the Kentucky Wildcats will host the Alabama Crimson Tide in this marquee SEC showdown. Both teams feature a high-power offense and vying for conference supremacy. Alabama, led by head coach Nate Oates, 3-1 in conference play, sitting with an impressive 14-3 overall record. The Wildcats also sitting there with a 14-3 overall record, also 3-1 in conference play. Cannot wait for this matchup. Alabama comes in as our 5th team as far as our power rankings go. Folks, this team knows how to put points on the board, almost 90 points per game. Now, defense struggles at times, allowing their opponents about 77 points per game, but they excel in limiting teams from behind that three-point line. As far as the Kentucky Wildcats, Kentucky comes in as our 19th power-ranked team. This team also right behind Alabama as far as in scoring, 3rd in the nation with 88.7 points per game. Their defense allows 74.6 points per game. Folks, expect this game to be a very high-paced ball game. If you remember back to the conference opener with Kentucky and Florida, both teams hit the century mark in that ball game. Alabama's strength, elite scoring and defensive dominance. Rebounding dominance. They're going to need a big-time effort on both of those areas. As far as key Kentucky's strengths on defense, perimeter defense. They do a fantastic job of chasing teams off of that three-point line. The key for Alabama, must knock down the three-point shots. They like the volume. I'm looking at the makes. Alabama needs to get at least 16 made three-pointers in this contest if they're going to knock off the Wildcats there at home. As far as the Wildcats, effective ball movement. This team averages almost 18.5 assists per game. That leads to a lot of balanced scoring. That leads to a lot of excellent looks from the field. Alabama's strength is they limit their opponents as well from the three-point line. Only 28% is what Alabama opponents are shooting from behind the arc. Key for Kentucky in this matchup, must execute in the half court and minimize the turnovers. You do not want that Alabama Crimson Tide team getting out in transition. That's what Ole Miss was able to do in Coleman Coliseum earlier this week when they shut down Alabama with a just absolutely beautiful performance there on defense. Going to give a slight edge to the rebounding to Alabama as their total rebounding percentage almost 3 full percentage points better than Kentucky, and Alabama, the superior offensive rebounding team as far as this matchup goes. As far as I mentioned about turnovers, both teams force about 10.5 turnovers per game. Alabama needs to cut down as they're turning the ball over 3 more times in conference play than Kentucky. Going to give an edge there to Kentucky as far as that goes. Talked about the pace. Both teams like to get up and down the court, get that ball in the air and get to moving. As far as the free throw edge, slight edge to Kentucky, shooting about 74% from the foul line. Alabama just at 70%. Kentucky opened as a 6.5-point favorite in this contest. As we currently look right now, that number has dwindled down to where Kentucky is now just a 2.5-point favorite. Folks, that total sits at 177.5. Wow. Guys in the desert are expecting a high-scoring contest. As far as Kentucky goes, Jackson Robinson, 17 points per game, almost 9 boards. He's going to need a big-time effort. And Lamont Butler, 14 points per game. I think both of those young men are going to have a big-time scoring performance in this contest. The second leading scorer in the conference, Mark Sears for the Crimson Tide, 20.5 points per game, 6.5 assists per game. He's going to need some help. And I'm looking at Aiden Holloway, 13 points per game. Going to need a big-time effort out of him. Final keys in this contest for Alabama: use their pace and rebounding edge to generate easy scoring opportunities in this contest, and they must contain Kentucky's ball movement. For Kentucky, take advantage of that home crowd there in Rupp. Get efficient offense by controlling the game tempo. And then when you're able to get out in transition, get those dunks that gets that crowd up off their feet and get going. So I expect this to be another high-scoring contest. Looking forward to this matchup later on today. Ran a little bit over, but want to say thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for tuning into the SEC conference call. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things SEC basketball. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more basketball content. And make sure to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the SEC conference call.